Hello, and welcome to this review of the 2022 Mini Cooper SE. Just to be clear from the beginning, this is the full electric version of the Mini Cooper. So, as you may know, there's the Mini Cooper, the Mini Cooper S, and a million other variations. This is a two-door, small, traditional Mini Cooper, but there's no internal combustion engine. It's fully electric. We'll come back to that in a later segment because it's a very important part of this car. But for now, we want to get right down to our main mission here, which is talking about the user interface and then about the audio system. So fundamentally, the Mini Cooper SE has a fairly straightforward user interface. I would say if you're used to any modern mid-priced, by that I mean $40,000-ish car from Europe or America or Japan, this version of the Mini Cooper has the main features that those cars would have. And what I mean by that is you've got limited autonomous driving capability. In this case, almost nothing. You've got warnings about lane departure and following distance, but you don't have the emerging lane keep assist, which is optional on some European cars, standard on more Asian cars, and there's a mix with American cars. So you don't have lane keep assist, and you don't have advanced cruise control where the car will keep a certain following distance, in many cases all the way down to 0 miles per hour. So you can essentially keep your feet off the brake or the throttle pedal. So apart from that autonomous driving element of the user interface, which in some cars is a pain to turn on, and in some cars, Tesla especially, is almost second nature. We don't have to worry about that here. The rest of the user interface, as you'll show in the clips that we will embed in this video, is again pretty straightforward, with possibly two exceptions. You've got a 9-inch, I think it's 8.9-inch center screen. Unlike Mini Coopers of old, there's also a central cluster directly in front of the steering wheel that gives you speedometer and battery charge information. Like a lot of modern BMWs, yes, Mini Cooper's made by BMW, so there's some commonalities here. There's quite a bit of duplication of some numbers. You can have two speedo readouts. You can have the battery state of charge appear in multiple places. That seems like a waste of space, but the flip side of that is it means that information that might be very important to you is available in multiple places. In this particular car, the battery state of charge is indicated by a colored ring around the large central display. So it's going to be a 12-inch diameter loop of color that is an analog style gauge. I mean, it's lights, and so it's digitally activated, but the way it works is analog style of the circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller as your state of charge goes down, which in my experience almost works like a subconscious battery charge indicator. The flip side is because it's there all the time and appears to just be fancy lights, you might just not even notice that your charge is getting low. As I said before, it's got essentially most of the modern features. This one has seat heating. It's got Apple CarPlay, as I said, which is the dominant interface to the media world, which is probably the thing that's going to be important to many users. I found the 9-inch display to be, while it's pretty typical, it was perfectly adequate. If it had had a 12-inch display, would that have been cool? I guess. You need to go to probably a 14-inch or a 15-inch display realistically to have the ability to split the screen in a useful way. Mini at times splits it up, but a little tiny map this big and some other data it's readable, but it's not the most useful functionality that I've seen. Don't take that as a criticism. My point is you need a very, very large display to have the split screen functionality do something for you. But because it's got two displays, have plenty of information available to you pretty much at all times. And I didn't find myself very often wanting for some information that I didn't have essentially at my fingertips. It's got the latest version of Idrive, which for those of you who've been around for a while may sound like damning with faint praise. But honestly, Idrive right now works perfectly well. There's this knob which allows you to navigate on screen. It's also a touch screen, so that works out perfectly well. And then these quick access buttons, being able to just punch the menu button and bring up the menu from wherever you are is very handy. But I find if you're a CarPlay user, I find that that's the primary place you are, and the other things you're doing are mainly setup kinds of features, with, of course, possible exception of navigation. But again, with CarPlay or Android Auto, you can use the CarPlay system for your navigation, which is I tend to do, and it works quite well. So, in summary, I thought the user interface worked pretty well for most of the main things you would want to do during the day. There are hard-coded, real buttons on the dash, so that saves the UI from having to carry too much of the load. And personally, I prefer that. The things that require fine touch, like volume control, don't work as well on a touchscreen, no matter what you're trying to do, because your arm inevitably shakes a little bit and you can grab onto the knob, and that gives you another point of reference and dial in the volume or the temperature control or whatever it might be. So I thought the split between what's actually on the display and the interface that's embedded in the display and what's available on the hard-coded buttons was pretty good. What exists down here are the HVAC controls. So you set, AC, heat, the temperature you want, the fan mode, whether you want auto or manual control over the fan, that kind of stuff, which most of us do all the time because the car heats up or the car cools down and you're making adjustments depending on angle of the sun and all of that sort of stuff. So I like the fact that there were knobs there. There are also buttons for the seat heater, buttons for the sport and green mode, which mainly affect throttle response. But green mode is a way to kind of restrict your either top speed or restrict your throttle response so you don't burn quite as much energy. It makes a little bit of difference. I found it was in the 5% range. For a car with this range, I don't think it's, going to make a huge difference, but it might, depending on how long your commute is, it could be a bit of a difference maker. AC on off, max AC, defrost, that kind of stuff is all on hard-coded buttons, so you can just go straight to it and punch it in. And I don't completely understand this, but BMW does insist on having hard-coded buttons for presets for the combination of channel and frequency if it's an FM radio, but you can also program it so that you can just go directly to a particular media channel, if you will, that you use. For those people who have a few things they like to switch between, I think it's a nice touch. I didn't think it was, a particularly crucial deal. The steering wheel has fairly common items on it. Volume, up, down, channel change, answer the phone. That's on the right side of the wheel. And then the left side of the wheel is your cruise control adjustments. Pretty standard stuff that, again, this is a solid middle of the road modern car in terms of UI, with a very nice, very clear touchscreen display that works just fine. There just aren't super standout features. If I had a critique, I would say it's that the display in front of the wheel isn't very programmable, and there might be other things you want on there that you can't really set it up to do. But given how big and pretty line of sight the central display is, not a huge deal. So Tesla Model 3 is a completely different setup. Essentially no hard-coded buttons, a very big display. So split screen works on the Model 3, and it's got all the advantages of split screen and a very graphical interface, and all the disadvantages of no hard mechanical buttons. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I would say the Mini interior looks very nice, but it's kind of traditional car. I would say the Tesla Model 3, which is a much more expensive car, I would say the Tesla Model 3 has a cool, super modern vibe to the interior. But again, there's really nothing wrong here, and it's well designed and stylish, and yeah, I think you would really enjoy being here. The seat comfort is another part of UI that I want to talk about, and of course your mileage may vary, so this is kind of a hard thing to do, but I thought the firmness of the seats was good. BMW seats tend to be on the firm side, but with a little bit of squishiness, so they're fairly comfortable over the long haul. The shape of the seat back, I think, is very nice. The adjustability is all mechanical. I don't know, how often do you adjust your seat? If you've got multiple drivers getting in and out, often maybe. But if it's your car and you drive it all the time, then set it and forget it. It works really well. The one thing I will mention about seat comfort is the bottom cushion, and the firmness and the shape are, I think, very good, well above average. But BMW, with its sporting heritage, assists on these side bolsters, and I don't see the point. On the bottom cushion, you're not getting much gain. You're not going to be doing 1.2 Gs. The car might do it, but you're not going to be doing that very often before you're threatening pedestrians. So the bottom cushion is mainly a pain because I'm a pretty skinny guy, and you end up with your thighs with this side bolster sticking into you, and it doesn't hurt, but it does not add to the comfort. And I don't understand why BMW lets its stylists overrule its ergonomics people and stick these things in a lot of cars, but this is certainly one of them, and it's not a super wide car, so it makes the seats narrower than need be, and I don't quite get the point. These guys, these wings here, are much less of an issue and are much more beneficial if you're going to corner rapidly. So it would make a heck of a lot more sense if they would concentrate on that and give you a little more comfortable shape to this bottom cushion. I care a lot about seat comfort because you're in your car, most of us are, quite a bit, and I want it to be right, and this is, in my view, not right. It makes you line your legs up in this funny, not that comfortable way. I'm probably making more of a big deal of it than I should, but again, a criticism for BMW, who otherwise did a really great job on these seats. Oh, one last thing to mention is the seat bottom cushion, standard BMW fare, is extendable, so shorter people and taller people all should be able to find good, solid leg support. So that's the basics of the infotainment user interface and a little bit more about the ergonomics of the car. Now, as is our focus here, we also want to talk about the audio system per se as an audio system. So I said before that you have CarPlay as the primary user interface, and frankly, I like it. And frankly, it makes going from car to car rather easy, so the consistency you get in a CarPlay environment is very good. This car has the Harman Kardon premium audio system in it. Harman Kardon is a division of Samsung, and it's a long-standing 50 years in the audio business kind of company. They tend to know what they're doing, and they are among the biggest, if not the biggest, manufacturer of premium audio systems in the automotive world. So they have testing facilities and scientists and a lot of experience making audio systems for cars. That's great to a point, but does it sound good? That's really the fundamental thing. And I'm going to say, again, a little bit like my coverage of the user interface, it's fairly standard premium audio fare. It sounds good, but I'd have to say not great. There's the $500 to $1,000 tier of premium audio. This is in that tier in terms of price point, and it's in that tier in terms of sound quality. I say that not because I know the price, but I did extensive listening tests using Tidal and Qobuz as my main sources. I ran my iPhone out through USB to avoid the limitations of Bluetooth bandwidth. Bluetooth is a very limited audio medium in terms of its fidelity capability. So I listened carefully to a wide variety of music: classic rock, modern pop, country, bluegrass, classical, jazz, pretty wide variety of music. And I'd say, again, this is not a system that's going to satisfy people who want super thumpy, boomy bass. Coming from my interest in musical accuracy, that's fine. But certainly if you're a hip hop fan, you might not find that this will deliver enough bass to make you happy. From an accuracy standpoint, the bass is pretty well balanced. I thought the bass was reasonably articulate for a car audio system, but a 6 on a scale of 10 in terms of its clarity and bass definition and depth. Going up to the mid-range, I would say this system has the classical problem of many automotive systems where you have tweeters in the A pillar and you've got a mid-range driver down here on the door near the kick panel. In my case, it's adjacent to my knee. Without going too much into the science of that, the issue that creates is almost inevitably due to the radiation pattern of the drivers. There's a point where neither of the drivers, the mid-range driver or the tweeter, can deliver its maximal power. And so you tend to get a little bit of a dip in the mid-range, and there's a slight inarticulateness there. I tried adjusting the controls on the head unit, which allow you to adjust bass, treble, and balance, but there wasn't really a way to completely correct for that. I'm being super picky here, and for $700 in the audio world, expecting perfection is just the same way as you're not going to get 750 horsepower in a full carbon fiber chassis for 40 grand. So I thought the audio system was good. It was enjoyable. It was better than the bass systems that come on some cars. It's certainly a worthwhile upgrade. Could it be better? Yes, it could be, but you probably get into the land of the super premium systems that are being done by Bang & Olufsen and Meridian and Burmester to be able to get fundamentally better audio product than you have here. So I'd say, pretty good, and overall bass, mid-range, and treble are in that 6 to 7 on a scale of 10 for a picky audiophile guy like me. So totally worth it, recommended, but don't come expecting something that this level of expenditure can't deliver. So my answer is, for people who live in urban situations and are mainly commuters and have access to a second car or maybe a third car, this is a great option because it's really fun to drive and it's really, really economical. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion of 2022 Mini Cooper SE. I hope you'll come back and watch more of these, and also check in for our coverage of the infotainment system on other cars that we'll be covering in the near future. Thanks.